So friends, today we will study about the overview of the nervous system. See, now if I talk about the nervous system, your nervous system is divided into the two parts, that is your central nervous system and your peripheral nervous system. We will today talk about very basic, that what is nervous system, so that you can understand the another topics very well. So for doing that you need to really go through this. So nervous system. If I talk about the nervous system, as I told you, it is divided into the two parts. Yes, any guesses what are they? Yes, they are your central nervous system and your peripheral nervous system. Fine. So we have nervous system divided into the two parts, that is your central nervous system and your peripheral nervous system. And if I have to divide it further, so your central nervous system will divide it into again the two parts, that is your brain and your spinal cord. And your peripheral nervous system is divided into further parts that we will see. Fine, that we will see. And now if we talk about the central nervous system only, let's focus on the central nervous system. CNS means your central nervous system. Fine, that is divided into your two parts, that is your brain and another one is your spinal cord. Now let's discuss about these two things in detail. See, your brain is what? Your brain is very delicate organ as well as your spinal cord, which is comes under your central nervous system. And if we talk about the brain, right? If I talk about the brain, see, it is situated or it is covered by your thick covering of the bone that is called your skull. Likewise, your spinal cord is outer covering of the spinal cord is means your spinal cord hides in the bone which is called your vertebral column, because they are very delicate organ and they could not be placed like this in the outwards, otherwise it will got the injury. So nature has designed it like this, that it is protected by the very hard covering which is called your skull in the brain and your vertebral column in the spinal cord. Fine. And if we talk about further, let's say we have brain and spinal cord, right? And if I talk about the brain and spinal cord, these both are arranged in the layers, right? They both are arranged in layers. And if I talk about these layers, what are they? They are your gray matter and your white matter. I'll discuss what are they. So your gray matter is your what? See, if you have seen the structure of the neuron, you know what is neuron? It is a basic unit of the nervous system, right? Your nervous system is made up of the neurons. Means neuron is a cell, basic unit of cell of the nervous system. I think everybody knows the structure of neuron. If you don't know, don't worry, we will discuss it. So this is the structure of neuron, fine. And if I talk about the neuron structure, so this part along with the dendrites is your cell body, and this one is your axon and nerve endings. This axon hillock and your nerve endings. Fine. And if I talk about the cell body, fine, these consist along with the nucleus, it is your gray matter. Means your gray matter includes your cell body as well as the nucleus. And if I talk about the white matter, that includes your axon and your nerve endings. Means a remaining part other than the cell body of the neuron is your white matter. So why they are called gray matter or white matter? Because of their color. Means gray. See, in the axon we have a myelin sheath. This is a myelin sheath, right? So myelin sheath is basically gives the white appearance or is white in structure. So it gives the white appearance to the axon. So that is why they are called the white matter. And if we talk about the cell body, it is devoid of myelin sheath. Means it do not have the myelin sheath. So it gives the appearance of gray color. So they are called the gray matter and the white matter. Fine. Now if I talk about, let me take new slide. Right. Now, if I talk about the gray matter and white matter in the brain and spinal cord, the little difference is there. See, if I talk about the gray matter in the brain, it is situated where it is in the outer part of the brain. Is your gray matter. Fine. You have to learn one, and another one is opposite. And in your spinal cord, the inner portion or part of the spinal cord is gray matter. Fine. And the same thing if I talk about the inner portion or the inner part of the brain. Yes, now it's easy. Then it is called your white matter. And in the spinal cord, outer portion or part of the spinal cord is your gray matter. Sorry, white matter. Outer portion in the spinal cord is your white matter. Fine. So if you can see here, you have to learn the one thing and another one is opposite. For example, if you have to remind of the brain, You just have to remind that inner portion of the brain is your white matter. Inner portion in the brain is your white matter, and if you talk about the spinal cord, it is opposite. Inner portion of the spinal cord is called your gray matter. Easy? Very easy. And thus likewise same, similarly if you talk about the outer part of the brain, that is your gray matter, and if you talk about the spinal cord, it is opposite. Outer portion of the brain of the spinal cord is your white matter. Anything is difficult? No? So clear? So let's move forward. See, and we have talked about the brain and spinal cord, the surroundings, means how they are arranged. They are arranged in the layers, which are called your gray matter and white matter. So now, if we proceed next to the next part, then we will see the coverings. Coverings of the brain and spinal cord. See, it is very easy. I'll make you to remind the neuroanatomy very easy, but just follow it. See, if you see the coverings of the brain and spinal cord, these are called what? The coverings of the brain and spinal cord are called your meninges. What they are called? They are called meninges. Outer means protective coverings of the brain as well as your spinal cord are called the meninges. So we have three meninges or three coverings that are called your means I learned it with the mnemonic DAP. You can also make your mnemonics or learn it all self. So D is for durameter, A is for arachnoid matter, and P is for pia matter. Means I learned it with the DAP because it has a reason. So if you see, your dura mater is the outermost covering of the brain as well as your spinal cord. Means here you don't have to learn any opposite thing. Both the coverings are the same for the brain as well as your spinal cord. The outermost covering is your dura mater. Means it follows the procedure like it is the outermost layer, it is a middle layer, and it is the inner layer. So I learned it with this mnemonic DAP. You can make your mnemonic also. So D is for durameter, A is for arachnoid matter, and P is for pia matter. So it is the outermost covering, which is called your dura matter. Middle covering is is called your arachnoid matter, and innermost covering is the pia matter. So we have these three coverings or these three meninges for the brain and the spinal cord. Fine. Now, a very important thing which I have to say now, the space between your arachnoid matter and your pia matter is called what? Is called your subarachnoid space. What it is called? It is called subarachnoid space. Fine. So you don't have to learn it also. See, below the arachnoid is called, means downward, it is called sub, means it is situated below, so it is sub. Arachnoid means below the arachnoid matter is your pia matter, and between it is your space, so it is called, the space is called subarachnoid space because it is situated below the arachnoid matter. So it is named as your subarachnoid space. Why I told you it is very important? Because it has some purpose. If I say this subarachnoid space, it has some purpose. That is why I told you it is very important to learn. See, in the subarachnoid matter, you have the CSF fluid. It is worth repeating and it is very important to remember it. The subarachnoid space, which is below the arachnoid matter, in which your CSF fluid is present. CSF fluid is what? It is your cerebrospinal fluid. C is for cerebro, S is for spinal, F is for fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid. It is very important because it is the, you can say it is a fluid which is situated in the subarachnoid space in which the your brain and spinal cord dangles or it floats. it has many important functions. For example, it act as a shock absorber and protect the brain and spinal cord from many injuries. And it has some nutritive value also. It provides the nutrition to the brain and the spinal cord. It has many more functions. We will discuss it in the next lectures. But you have to remind that between in the subarachnoid space we have the cerebrospinal fluid, which is very important, and it is situated where, now it is situated in the subarachnoid space. So that is why need to know this space, right? And these are the coverings of your brain and spinal cord, which are called your durameter, arachnoid matter, and pia matter. And durameter is your outermost covering, arachnoid matter is your middle covering, and pia matter is your innermost covering. Fine. So now you know the coverings of the brain and the spinal cord. Now let's discuss another topic. See, now if I have to say about the spinal cord, right? You know the spinal cord, where it originates. See, if you see, this is your midbrain, your pons, your medulla, and this is your spinal cord. And above it you have a cortex or cerebrum, right? See, this is the if you see that below the brainstem, means your midbrain, pons, and medulla, that consists of that is called your brainstem. Below it is the hole or foramen, which is called your foramen magnum. Fine, which is called your foramen magnum. From it means the continuation of the medulla. It belows it continues with your foramen magnum. Below it, from it your spinal cord originates. Means your spinal cord originates from the medulla. Means when the medulla stops, it the continuation of the spinal cord initiates. So it originates from the foramen magnum till up to L1 vertebra. Fine. Anterior surface of the L1 vertebra. This is your spinal cord. And we have many segments of the spinal cord. For example, we have the cervical segment, we have the thoracic segment, we have the lumbar. Let me write it properly so that you can note down the spelling also. We have the lumbar segment, then we have the sacral segment and coccygeal segment. Fine. So these are the segments of the spinal cord. Okay. And your spinal cord originates from the foramen magnum to the L1 vertebra. Fine. So it is a spinal cord. And if we talk about the brain, again we have our brain further divides into three parts. That is your prosencephalon, your mesencephalon, and your rhombencephalon. It's very easy, no need to scare. See, if I talk about the brain, the classification of the brain, it further divides into three parts. That is your prosencephalon, your mesencephalon, and your rhombencephalon. Fine. And if I talk about the further classification, your prosencephalon again will divide into two parts. See, your prosencephalon will again divide into two parts. That is your telencephalon and your diencephalon. Fine. And if we talk about the further classification of it, let me take a new pen so that it will be more clear to you. Your telencephalon further divides into your cerebrum, your hippocampus, amygdala. Amygdala is also called your amygdaloid body, and your basal ganglia. These are nothing but the nuclei in the brain, or you can say gray matter in the brain. And your cerebrum is your cerebral hemisphere, means your left and right hemisphere. Fine. So these four are included under your telencephalon. And if I talk about the diencephalon, it is further divided into many parts, which are thalamus, your hypothalamus, your metathalamus, your subthalamus. Okay, so these are included in your diencephalon. So with this, your prosencephalon completes. And if I talk, okay, I'll tell it later. And mesencephalon, if I talk about the classification of the mesencephalon, let me take another pen. So mesencephalon will divide into one part only, that is called your midbrain. Okay. And if I talk about the rhombencephalon, with which pen I should draw? Okay, let me take orange color. Fine. So your rhombencephalon again will divide into two parts. That is your metencephalon and your myencephalon. And if I talk about the metencephalon, it further divides into two parts. Let me draw it with another pen. That is your pons and your cerebellum. And don't confuse this cerebellum with cerebrum. Your cerebrum is your cerebral hemisphere, while your cerebellum is your cerebellum. Fine. And if I talk about the myencephalon, it has the medulla oblongata. Okay. Now in short, in summary, we will summarize that. See, we have the classification of brain. It is further divided into three parts, that is your prosencephalon, your mesencephalon and your rhombencephalon. If we talk about the prosencephalon, it further divides into two parts, that is your what? Let me take another slide, otherwise we will copy from here only. We will revise. Yes, now speak. Your brain is divided into three parts, that is your prosencephalon, your mesencephalon and your rhombencephalon. If we talk about the prosencephalon, that will divide it into further two parts, that is your, yes, telencephalon and diencephalon. If we talk about the telencephalon, that will divide again into four parts, that is your 1. Cerebrum, basal ganglia, your hippocampus and your amygdaloid body. Okay, revise it with me, along with me. Okay, and your second part is your diencephalon. Diencephalon again will divide it into thalamus, hypothalamus, metathalamus, subthalamus and one more, your epithalamus. Fine. And if we talk about the prosencephalon and mesencephalon. Mesencephalon will divide into midbrain. And if you talk about your rhombencephalon, it will again divide into your two parts, that is your metencephalon and your myencephalon. The metencephalon again will divide into two parts, that is your cerebellum and your pons. And myencephalon will divide into medulla oblongata. Clear? It's very easy. if you understand by with heart. You have to little memorize it. Okay. Now I'll tell you one interesting thing before proceeding. Let me take another pen. Okay. Let us draw with the blue pen. You know, prosencephalon, mesencephalon, and rhombencephalon has another names also. What are they? Any guesses? If anybody know, please pause the video and comment me in the comment section. Okay, let's proceed. Your prosencephalon is also called your forebrain. You have heard of it, right? Yes. Forebrain is your prosencephalon, means it is another name for the prosencephalon. It's a forebrain. And mesencephalon, we have the midbrain only, means another name for the mesencephalon. And if we talk about the rhombencephalon, its another name is your hindbrain. So you can also say your brain is classified into three parts, either prosencephalon, mesencephalon, or rhombencephalon, or you can say forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Means either ways you are right. Fine, because it has the two names. You can pronounce it with anyone. So you now know prosencephalon divides into telencephalon and diencephalon. Mesencephalon is your midbrain and rhombencephalon is your hindbrain, which is again divides into two parts, that is your metencephalon and diencephalon. Fine. If this is clear, I'll tell you one more interesting thing. See, you have seen that it is midbrain from the mesencephalon, pons from the metencephalon, and medulla oblongata from the diencephalon. If we combine these three, then it will form your brain stem. Means your brain stem is also called your midbrain, pons, and medulla. Fine. Means your brain stem is formed with the three structures, your midbrain, your pons, and medulla, which are the parts of your brain only. Now it is clear. See, it's very easy, right? So it is clear, right? Your brain and spinal cord, little bit you know about it, means overview of it. So if it is clear, let's proceed to the next. You know now what is brain, you know now what is spinal cord, you know the classification of brain, and you know the segments of the spinal cord and from where the spinal cord originates. Now let's talk about the peripheral nervous system. See, if we talk about the peripheral nervous system, likewise, see, I told you your nervous system is divided into your central nervous system and your peripheral nervous system. And we have talked about the central nervous system, which is again divided into your spinal cord, yes, and your brain. And now we are focusing on the peripheral nervous system. Fine, because we have discussed about the central nervous system. Now we should know a little bit about the peripheral nervous system. We are not going into detail, it's just the overview. Fine. So let's focus here. See, your peripheral nervous system is also made up of the neurons and the supporting cells, that is called your neuroglia, which is the same for your central nervous system, that is also made from your neurons and the supporting cells, which are neuroglia. But what is the difference is that in the central nervous system, the neurons and the neuroglia, which is the supporting cells, these are the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord, which are comprised of, means your brain and spinal cord are also made up of the your neurons and the supporting cells. But if their neurons and the supporting cells contribute to the brain and spinal cord, then it is called your central nervous system. And if they contribute to the peripheral nervous system, then they are called the peripheral nervous system. And now let's see what comes on the peripheral nervous system. It's nothing but, see, it's outside of the brain. Means for example, if you see your cranial nerves, and your spinal nerves. See, it's not the you can say entirely different from your brain and spinal cord. But see, your cranial nerves are the nerves which are connecting or taking the messages in the brain only. So these are called your cranial nerves. And the spinal nerves are what? Spinal nerves are nothing but see, for example, let's say this is your spinal cord, right? For example, this is your spinal cord, and see, the nerves which are taking sensation to the spinal cord are the dorsal nerve or the sensory nerves, and these are taking the information towards the brain. And the nerves which are taking information from the brain to the effector organ, these are called your efferent nerves or your motor nerves. Fine. So these are the nerves or spinal nerves which are taking origin from the spinal cord. Means they are not included in the spinal cord, but they are the leaflets, or you can say they are originating from the spinal cord. So these are called your spinal nerves. Fine. And now if we talk about the peripheral nervous system, let me take the new slide. If we talk about the peripheral nervous system, like central nervous system is divided into two parts, that is your brain and spinal cord. Your peripheral nervous system is again divided into two parts, that is your somatic nervous system and your autonomic nervous system. Fine. If we talk about the somatic nervous system, it is the nerves only which are supplying your muscles. Fine. And if we talk about the autonomic nervous system, these are also the spinal nerves or the cranial nerves, but which are supplying your viscera. You know viscera means your organs, right? Now here we have one thing to understand. You know muscles. If I talk about to bend your elbow, you can do it, right? This is under your control. But if I talk about that you should stop your heartbeat, can you stop? No. Why? Because it is not under your control. Why it is not under your control? Because it is supplying by your autonomic nervous system. And muscles, why they are in your control means whenever you want, you can raise your hand. Whenever you want, you can take your hand down because it is supplied by your somatic nervous system. So your somatic nervous system is also called your voluntary nervous system. Voluntary means which are under your wish, means it is another name for the somatic nervous system, your voluntary nervous system. And your autonomic nervous system has also the another name. Let me take the another pen. It is called your involuntary nervous system. Why involuntary? Because it is not under your control. Let me give you some example. For example, your heartbeat. Fine. Your digestion, your deglutition. These are your involuntary actions. And if I talk about the voluntary nervous system, right, or somatic nervous system, for example, to flex the elbow or to raise your hand These comes under your peripheral nervous system. Fine. Is it clear so far? So now let's proceed to the next topic. A little is left, don't worry. See, we have talked about the peripheral nervous system. Now we know peripheral nervous system is divided into two parts, your somatic nervous system and your autonomic nervous system. Right. Now I want to add one new thing here. It's not a new actually, but see, autonomic nervous system is further divided into two parts. That is your parasympathetic nervous system and your sympathetic nervous system. Fine. Your parasympathetic nervous system and your sympathetic nervous system, these are actually both are involuntary and they are under the autonomic nervous system. What's the difference is, I'll tell you a little in detail. We will study in the chapter of the autonomic nervous system. See, parasympathetic nervous system always work in your relaxation and your sympathetic nervous system always work in your fight or flight situation, means in emergency. Fine. Let me give you one example. See, your digestion. You don't have to panic or you don't have to immediately react on it. So your digestion is your parasympathetic, controlled by your parasympathetic nervous system, right? Your urinary part means your control of the urine. It is also controlled by your parasympathetic nervous system. And if I talk about the sympathetic nervous system, think of the situation that suddenly a tiger comes in front of you, right? Your sympathetic nervous system will be act because it is either a fight or flight situation, means either you will fight with that tiger or you will run away from the situation. Means whenever your fight or flight situation will become, or your fight or flight situation is there, your sympathetic nervous system would be acting. Fine. And if there is a rest, means parasympathetic nervous system always act on the rest condition. Means if there is any involuntary activity but under the rest, that is controlled by your parasympathetic nervous system. Fine. So with this I finishes up this lecture, but let me revise it. See, so far we have talked about the nervous system, right? And then we talk about the nervous system, which is divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And then we talk about that what is the classification of the central nervous system. We have the spinal cord and the brain. And then we talked about a little about the brain and the spinal cord, means their meninges, their layers, that is your gray matter and your white matter. And then we also talked about that the location of the brain, means it is situated in the skull. Location of the spinal cord, that it is continuing below the foramen magnum, and it until the anterior surface of the L1 vertebra, it continues, means it elongates, right? Then also we talk about the segments of the spinal cord. Fine. Then we proceed to the the CSF fluid from that where it is situated, and a little functions of cerebrospinal fluid. Then we talk about the classification of the brain. That brain is divided into three parts: your prosencephalon, your mesencephalon, and your rhombencephalon. Either your forebrain or midbrain and your hindbrain. And then we talk about the classification of prosencephalon, means we talked about this a whole, your telencephalon and your diencephalon. Mesencephalon is your midbrain. Then we talk about the rhombencephalon, that is again divided into your metencephalon and your myencephalon. Fine. Then this classification of the central nervous system with this is completed. Then we have little discussion on the peripheral nervous system, that is it is extension only, means extends from the brain and the spinal cord, but made up from the same cells, your neurons and neuroglia. Your peripheral nervous system is divided into two parts. We have discussed that your somatic nervous system and your autonomic nervous system. And somatic nervous system is under your control, so it is called a voluntary nervous system. And autonomic nervous system is under not your control, so it is called your involuntary nervous system. Fine. So we have talked about this. So this is your overview of the nervous system. Fine. Thank you so much. Like my video, share it, and don't forget to subscribe. And please do comment in the comment section that whatever you want in the next video, I'll try to make it. Thank you so much.